Is the Baltimore Ravens 2022 roster complete as it currently stands? We talk about that and more next year on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And we've returned here with another episode of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Ostreicher of Ravens Wire. Of course, we're here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for making Locked On Ravens your first listen of the day. We're free and available on all platforms, including on YouTube. And we're back, a midweek edition of the show, diving into, of course, some Ravens topics here on Locked On Ravens. And today I do want to talk a bit about the Ravens roster as a whole. We've kind of been looking at it from a bunch of different perspectives over the last couple of weeks. But I know something that some people have asked, at least, is the Ravens roster complete? At this very stage in time, Wednesday, July 6th, is the Ravens roster complete? If they did not make another move, would it be okay? What would the roster look like, etc.? So we're going to talk about that in the second segment and then kind of expand on it a bit in the final segment when we answer some mailbag questions. And we do have some mailbag questions to answer in the final segment. But yeah, talking about this roster, I know there are some moves some people would like to see, and I'll talk about the stuff that I've talked about on the show before, but what would happen if they didn't do that, if they just went into the year with what they had currently? So we'll talk about that in the second segment. In the first segment, though, I do want to talk a bit about Justin Tucker and just kind of like appreciate his greatness, I guess. There's the NFL Top 100 coming out pretty soon, and the NFL Films account on Twitter put out a teaser about asking if a kicker deserves to be on the top 100 list and if that kicker should be Justin Tucker and, whether Tucker deserves a spot. And a lot of the players said, yeah, Justin Tucker is that guy. So we're going to talk a bit about Justin Tucker, what we've kind of really almost gotten used to over the past 10 seasons for Tucker, and talk about just how good he has been, because he's been more than good. He's been incredible. So we're going to dive into all that here today, though. First, though, if you hear this on YouTube, thank you so much for tuning in, watching, using my face, my background, everything here. Be sure to subscribe to this channel, like this video. I want to thank everybody who's already subscribed. We have reached 2,000 subscribers. We are on our way now to 3,000. So if you're thinking about subscribing, haven't quite yet, why you should is because we put out daily Ravens content 5 days per week. And that means Ravens news, opinions, analysis, historical perspectives, anything relating to this team. We have the up-to-the-day news Monday through Friday. So be sure to subscribe, like this video. Also in audio form, thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to follow along with us, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you're listening, on your way to work, on your way from work, wherever. Thank you, as well as the same show, both audio and video. Also, be sure to follow me on Twitter at ChaosSharker34 and the Locked On Ravens account at Locked On Ravens. So let's dive into our content now. Let's talk about Justin Tucker. And it's always fun to talk about Justin Tucker, right? And especially what we saw last season. When you think of Justin Tucker, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? For me, there are a bunch of different things, but I honestly think of a couple different plays. I mean, if you want to go the more recent route, obviously you can talk about that 66-yarder he had in Detroit. Just he won them that game. That was a game that they honestly probably should have lost. And it was a game that, again, Marquise Brown had those pretty much 3 drop touchdowns, and the Ravens just couldn't get a handle on Detroit for the whole game. Justin Tucker, after that 4th and 19, Lamar Jackson and Sammy Watkins completion, Justin Tucker, heroically strolls onto the field and just absolutely boots that 66-yard field goal. When I was watching it live, I thought that the ball had bounced off of the crossbar and went back into the field of play. I didn't think that it had actually gone the opposite way and went into the net. So I was like, oh, all right, well, good try. He was so close, but he missed. And then all of a sudden you see it hit the net. And you're like, wait. And then, the celebration. And it was just, there's another angle of it. I think the NFL posted it on Twitter. There's the celebration everybody had was incredible. I go back to his rookie season, though, that playoff run that the Ravens had during his rookie season. That was the year after, obviously, the heartbreak, the horror that Billy Cundiff field goal miss was in that 2011 season, which was, again, it's still not fun to think about. I'll put it that way. The Ravens bring in this undrafted free agent out of Texas, and there's a story that how Tucker almost went to the Steelers. The Ravens wanted him to wait a little bit, and he didn't know if the Ravens were going to call back. And so, he was kind of weighing his options, and the Steelers were interested, but the Ravens called back. He went to Baltimore. He beat out Billy Cundiff, who by that point, his career was on the downswing. It would have been very hard for him to recover from that. He had a great season before the 2011 season, but his career was on the downswing. So Tucker comes in, takes over in that 2 overtime game against Denver, the first ever 2 overtime game in NFL history, comes in and, really just absolute nerves of steel, goes in, ice in his veins, and just nails that kick in double overtime, puts them into the AFC Championship against New England. Even in that, week, what was it, 3, right? Week 3 against New England, maybe it was 4. I think it was 3, though. It was close. It kind of goes over the upright, but he wins the Ravens a game there. He has won the Ravens so many different games, given them points at the end of halves. I mean, if you want a stats perspective from Justin Tucker, he has hit 91.1% of his field goal attempts throughout his entire career. That's from 2012 to 2021. Had the best field goal percentage. Had some of the best field goal percentage years for him. He had 97.4% in 2016. He hit 38 of 39 then. 94.6% in this most recent year, 2021. Hit 35 of 37. Also had 96.6. He's had 92. He's hovered around high 80s a couple times too. Some low 80 seasons in there too earlier in his career. Had 82.5, which was the lowest of his career in 2015, where he went 33 of 40 in field goals, but he didn't miss an extra point until 2018. That was that New Orleans Saints extra point where it did lose them the game. He's not a perfect kicker, but he is, I think, the closest thing you'll find to a perfect kicker. And I think the people who watch the Ravens have gotten, I don't want to say spoiled. I don't think spoiled is the right word, but they've gotten so used to watching Justin Tucker trot out there, 3 points, boom, guaranteed, boom, like it just feels like such a set thing that it feels weird to kind of think about, well, what happens when Justin Tucker retires and the next field goal kicker comes in? And maybe with that kicker, it's not so sure of a thing. It's going to be hard to be as sure of a thing as Justin Tucker, because he is the surest thing right now in NFL history at the position. So for him to come in there, the fact that he has his incredible accuracy, extraordinary leg power, that both those combined into one is very hard to find at the NFL level. We've seen teams, if you want to go recently, teams have struggled to find kickers in the past, right? It's every team's gone through it before. The Ravens have been very lucky to have players in their franchise history, their brief franchise history, like Matt Stover, who set that precedent as being an extremely good kicker. Cundiff did have a very good year in Baltimore before the field goal ended up kind of derailing his career. And then Justin Tucker, it's, very long-term kickers. They have had to use a couple of injury replacements, just sign guys. Like they have had to do that a couple of years, but for the most part, they've been very consistent with their kickers, and we do know how the Ravens value special teams so much. So my answer to if Justin Tucker deserves to be on the top 100 list, absolutely he does. Absolutely he does, especially for his 2021 year. This will be top players of 2022. So for what he did in 2021, again, 35 and 37 from field goals, 94.6% field goal percentage, hit all 32 of his extra points. He also kicked off 90 times, had a 52.2% touchback percentage, averaged 60.5 yards on his kickoff. He has never had a year where he's averaged below 60 yards on a kickoff. The lowest was actually 2021, where he averaged 60.5. That was the lowest kickoff average of his career. So, I mean, the numbers are incredible. You watch him, it's incredible. He's able to go out there, and if there's ever a 72-yard field goal before the half or something, like 2 seconds left, I'd feel more than comfortable if I'm John Harbaugh trotting out Justin Tucker and saying, you know what, this guy's otherworldly. We're going to let him have a crack at it. So all these different things where, again, the points at the end of halves, the 50-yarders where maybe the Ravens would have had to go for it or punt. There have been so many situations where Justin Tucker has won them games based off of accumulating points, won games based off of the clutch gene that he has. And so for him to be on this top 100 list, usually you think of kickers and you're like, what? Why would a kicker ever get on the top 100 list for a season? Justin Tucker, I think, has honestly deserved it multiple times. And for a player to be that good, I mean, there was a point raised, I can't remember who exactly said it, but someone said the only person who was as good at his position as Justin Tucker is Aaron Donald. And honestly, I don't necessarily disagree. Justin Tucker is so good. And I'm not saying that Justin Tucker is better than X, Y, Z at different positions, but Justin Tucker is so good at the kicker position that there is a clear argument to say that the only player who is better at his position than Justin Tucker is Aaron Donald on the defensive line. So it just proves the dominance that Justin Tucker's had over these past 10 seasons. You just have so many different memories of Justin Tucker, whether you started watching him during his rookie season, whether you were a fan that came along a little later and were watching him maybe in the 2015, 2016 started then. Regardless of when you started watching him, there are highlights from every single season, game winners, clutch kicks, long field goals, completely down the middle kicks. The year's like, all right, this is a gimme, this is a given. And for Justin Tucker, if you're a Ravens fan, if you're watching the Ravens, you feel safe every time Justin Tucker comes on the field. It's that thing that I think a lot of people felt with Sam Cook too. He comes on, you expect it to be a good punt, you pin the opponent back, get him inside the 20, inside the 10. It's that comfortability aspect that Justin Tucker has with kicking field goals, kicking off. And Jordan Stout can handle some punting abilities, can kick off a little bit depending on what the Ravens want to do there. But for Justin Tucker, man, for the Ravens' sake, I hope he plays till he's 50, 55, 60 and still has that with him. Now, obviously, we don't know when he's going to retire everything, but the day that he retires and hangs up his cleats will be definitely a day of it'll be an interesting one because it'll be a little bit like we saw with Sam Cook and what we felt with Sam Cook when it's like, oh, like that sense of stability is almost gone. Now we have to get used to something else. But for now, me personally, I'm gonna enjoy every kick Justin Tucker has from here on out. I put the Justin Tucker appreciation post out on Twitter, and for a reason, because he is the best at his position, the best kicker in NFL history, in my opinion, and he has earned that title most definitely. We still have a ton to talk about here on Locked On Ravens. When we get back, we're going to be diving into it. The Ravens roster, as it stands right now, today, is currently complete. We'll talk about that and more coming up. But first, I do want to tell you a bit about Built Bar. And from the people who invented Healthy and Tasty comes the latest gift to your taste buds. You probably tried the Coconut Brownie Chunk Built Bar, but guess what? There is a new Coconut Brownie Chunk in the Puffs treatment. That's right. Now the Coconut Brownie Chunk Built Bar flavor is a deliciously chewy marshmallow covered in 100% real chocolate. It's like a fluffy cloud of coconut brownie goodness. And the puffs are available for a limited time. So go to Built.com right now. Make sure you don't miss out because they're going so fast because they taste so good. And all Built Bars are made with proteins, which your body absorbs more efficiently, and they provide a ton of health benefits as well. They're delicious. Coconut rich, sweet brownie, creamy marshmallow. So stop fantasizing and get to Built.com to order your box of Coconut Brownie Chunk Built Puffs right now. Go to Built.com. Use promo code LOCK15. Get 50% off your order. Use promo code LOCK15. We're back. Our second segment of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher, your host, still here with you. Thank you again for making Locked On Ravens your first listen of the day. We're free and available on all platforms, and be sure to subscribe to this channel on YouTube and like the video. Be sure to follow us in audio form as well. But a key question I think that a lot of people have asked is, will the Ravens make more moves? Is this it for the Baltimore Ravens? Are they going to do something else? And I think that there are certainly avenues for them to do so. We've talked about a couple of positions where maybe they could definitely stand to add one or two players. We talked about wide receiver, talked about outside linebacker, but is the Ravens roster complete as it stands right now? If they were to sign no one else, nothing else happens, and they go into 2021, they trim down their roster to 53 with what they have, would that be viable enough to make the playoffs, win the North, go to the divisional round, AFC Championship, Super Bowl, whatnot? I think that, I'll start out by saying this. I think that if the Ravens don't make another move at all, just go with what they have, I think that it's not the be-all, end-all. Baltimore has an extremely talented roster with a lot of depth. I feel a lot more confident this year in the depth than I did last season, heading into this time of the year. So, yeah, I think that if Baltimore were to just say, you know what, we're not signing anybody, we like our guys, we're going with what we have, it'd be okay. But I think at a couple positions, I could definitely see them adding a player. Outside linebacker, right? Justin Houston, we've talked about. They brought in Jason Pierre-Paul as well for a visit. So they have those guys in their back pocket potentially if they do want. They applied the UFA tender to Justin Houston. So I think that when looking at what's the most likely scenario in terms of any move the Ravens could make, I think Justin Houston is that answer. Played in this defense last season. It will be a bit different with Mike McDonald at the helm outside opposed to Don Martindale. But still, he was really liked in the locker room. Stats don't necessarily jump off the page or anything compared to what he did in Indianapolis when people thought he was dumb when he got there. But again, he's a leader. They call him Yoda in that locker room, which I've said before. So I think that he would be a good addition. But right now you're at the outside linebacker position. You're looking at Lafe Owe, Dalen Hayes, a couple undrafted guys as well. So yeah, you could definitely stand to add a veteran, potentially even two at that position. But I mean, going down the rest of the roster, quarterback, you have your two in Lamar Jackson and Tyler Huntley. Running back, I don't think the Ravens are adding anybody else. They're going to have to trim down there. Fullback, Patrick Ricard and Ben Mason. That's good enough for me. Wide receiver, I still think adding Julio Jones would be a good option for him. But again, I don't think it is the be-all, end-all if they don't. Like, Julio is my number one option, but I'm not going to sit here and say if they don't sign Julio, they're not going to be good, right? Julio Jones is not the needle mover. They're going to win the Super Bowl versus they're not going to win the Super Bowl piece. I think that, that they have enough. It's unproven, but they have enough talent at the wide receiver position to say, we're just going to see what we have and go from there. So if that's what they're saying to themselves, then I'm okay with it, but I think would prefer a player like Julio Jones. And tight end, same thing. They're going to have to trim there. I think they're set. Offensive line, they're going to have to trim. I think they're set. Defensive line, I think they're right in a sweet spot there. I think they're set. We talked about outside linebacker a bit. Inside linebacker is a bit of a tricky one, and I want to dive into this a bit more. I don't know when I'm going to do it, but I will have. Maybe I'll talk to somebody about it on the show, where the inside linebacker position, I feel like, is a position that's just not as needed anymore in this defense, depending on how the Ravens run it, right? If they don't like to run those 60B looks, 3 safety looks, if Mike McDonald just switches up completely, I don't expect him to. But if that happens, then sure, you can play 2 inside linebackers on the field and whatnot. You can do it all 3 downs if you want to, kind of put in Patrick Queen, Josh Bynes, Willie Harrison, whoever else. If it's an undrafted guy like Kobe McLean, you can rotate him in and out. But with 3 safety looks, you can put Chuck Clark in the box, Tony Jefferson in the box. You can move Kyle Hamilton up there. Brandon Stevens can do some work there. So if you want to run 60Bs or run 3 safeties or whatever different look that's not base, you can have 1 inside linebacker plus a safety or plus another corner or whatnot, especially on 3rd down situations, obvious passing situations. So you're not necessarily stuck in, now we have to have Patrick Queen and Josh Bynes on every single down throughout the whole game. Baltimore values that versatility on defense. So when it comes to adding an inside linebacker, I personally don't see the need to do that. Maybe if there's an injury or, Malik Harrison is truly having a down year or something, Patrick Queen, something happens there, I don't know. But I think that they are set. I don't think they're going to keep as many inside linebackers as some people expect them to. I know some people have 5, 6. I have them at 4 right now, and maybe I'm wrong, but that's just where I have it. So sure, they could try to find another veteran inside linebacker. Maybe they want to bring back LJ Ford or something. I don't know. But for now, I think they're set at inside linebacker. Corner's an interesting one. I know some people have been lobbying for another cornerback to be added, and I personally think their depth is fine, but I do understand that Kyle Fuller is not the prime Kyle Fuller that we saw in Chicago, right? It's different. He definitely struggled in Denver last year, so you're relying on him to have a bounce back year. So people are saying, well, Joe Hayden, let's have them bring in Joe Hayden, and that'll be kind of an insurance policy. I don't necessarily see a way that they would be able to fit all those guys on the roster at corner and even in the secondary, because as I have it right now, they're already going to have to cut one of Geno Stoner or Darius Washington. They could have to move on for more guys. So it's not a matter of just stacking talent on talent on talent. The Ravens have done that, but to an extent, if you bring in too many guys, you're going to have to get rid of others that maybe you'd want to see on the roster. And look, I'm all for the best available options. You want to put them on the roster and make it happen because that gives you the best chance to win, right? That's just that's simple. But I also think that with the mix of veterans and young talent, I think the Ravens are fine at corner. I do understand that, if Marcus Peters isn't ready or if Kyle Fuller's really struggling, the depth is a little bit questionable behind those 3 guys, especially if Fuller struggles. You have Humphrey, Peters, Fuller, but then it's young guys. It's Jalen Armour-Davis, it's Pepe Williams, or Darius Washington, Brandon Stevens, depending on where you classify those guys at. So maybe they added a corner somewhere along the lines. We don't know what the cap casualty situation is going to look like, so maybe that's an opportunity for him to do that. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like the Ravens are set for now at corner. I like their depth, but I do understand that with an injury or two, and we've seen cornerback injuries to the Ravens over the past couple of seasons, it could start to get a bit thin. So I don't know. I'd keep an eye out on that, but I think they're okay for now. Safety, I think they're completely fine. I think they're going to have enough there, definitely. And then specialists, yeah, it's going to be one of each: kicker, punter, long snapper. So I think right now the Ravens roster is definitely in a good spot. I think they could certainly stand to add. I don't personally think it's done. I think we will make another addition or two before the start of the regular season, whether that is just a simple, all right, we're signing Justin Houston then. That's what we want to do. That's awesome. They can do that. Or if they want to say to themselves, yeah, well, now we want to add Justin Houston and another veteran outside linebacker and a wide receiver and a corner. They could do that too. They could even make a trade. And I think that with the kind of roster crunch they're going to have to go through a couple positions, they could definitely make a trade. And maybe, I don't know, if a team wants a combination of offensive linemen, like if Tristan Colon and Ben Powers aren't going to make the roster, can the Ravens find an outside linebacker that a team would be willing to part with? Maybe a young, promising, a little bit proven guy. There are those options. So I'm not ruling out a trade. I'm not ruling out anything else. I think the Ravens, at the very minimum, it just feels like Justin Houston's going to be back. Obviously, nothing set in stone yet, as it hasn't been, but it just feels that way. So I will say the Ravens are not done with their roster. I think it is fine the way it is. I think they'd be okay with the way it is, but I think they can do more to increase their ceiling, to up that, to be able to say to themselves that they feel more confident on September 2nd, let's say, than they did on July 6th today. So they have a couple avenues to improve their roster. Eric DeCosta is one that exhausts every option, it feels like, and he's a general manager that wants to put the best product on the field, obviously, and obviously have guys in that locker room who fit into the culture. So my final answer is no. I don't think the Ravens are done. I don't think the roster is set in stone as of today. I think they will make a couple more moves, but we'll see what those are. And if they do end up making those moves, we're going to continue this conversation a little bit in our final segment when we answer our mailbag questions. So come here, we're going to be diving into those mailbag questions. So stay tuned for that. We'll be right back here. We're back. Our final segment of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher, your host, still here with you. And again, thank you for making Locked On Ravens your first listen of the day. Be sure to subscribe to us on YouTube and like this video. Be sure to follow us in audio form and turn notifications on as well. And make your second listen of the day Locked On NFL. I hosted the Monday show, so if you want to listen to that Monday show, it is available anywhere you get your podcasts, again, including on YouTube. But let's dive into some mailbag questions to round out the show here. And this will continue our conversation a little bit from what we had in the second segment. So we'll first start off with two questions from Baltimore Wizard. The first, who would you prefer to add at areas of need? Outside linebacker Houston, JPP, Barr, wide receiver Julio, Fuller, Sanders, Odell. Okay, I like this question. So what we have, outside linebacker, first, I guess I spoiled this one in the second segment. I will take Justin Houston as my primary option. I don't think Jason Pierre-Paul is a bad option at all. Anthony Barr is a little bit of a different one that I don't think we've heard linked to Baltimore at all. Still, I think a solid player, but I think Houston with the familiarity, and I think Jason Pierre-Paul with the versatility. Those two guys, and also, I mean, the Ravens brought him in for a visit. I think my rankings would be in the order they were presented in Houston, JPP, and then Anthony Barr. But if the Ravens want to bring in two guys because their outside linebacker depth is looking pretty thin right now, admittedly, I would definitely wouldn't be mad at that because it would give them veteran options for sure. And then wide receiver, Julio, Fuller, Sanders, Odell. I guess I spoiled both of these, actually. I apologize for that. Yeah, it's Julio for me. If I had to rank, it would be in the order they're presented. Julio, Fuller, Sanders, Odell. Odell's very talented. I just don't know the injury situation. I made a whole episode on Odell it was about a month ago, I think. And I said that I personally at this point would not sign him because at this point with the ACL injury he suffered, when's he coming back? Is it November, December, January? Is it February? For the Ravens to use their very limited cap space to bring in a player, I think it should be somebody who you at least know is healthy to start the year out. So if Julio Jones misses like 8 games, all right, like I understand that, but he would have at least be seemingly available week 1, and you could kind of risk having him available for 12, 11 games, which I think would be okay in the long run, instead of maybe having Odell having to work his way back and then coming back and being on a snap count and stuff. It just, I don't know. That's my take on Odell. I still think he's extremely talented. Julio, I think, is the best option with his big body. You have Will Fuller, the speedster. Emmanuel Sanders, maybe a tad redundant, not entirely, but yeah, my option is definitely Julio Jones and Justin Houston at those two positions. If I had to pick one, like if I had to say outside linebacker or wide receiver, I think outside linebacker, their depth is just so thin right now. And if the season started today and Tyus Bowser and David Ojabo didn't come back for the start of the year, you'd be looking at 1 at Owe, 2 Dalen Hayes, 3 Vince Beagle, 4 Steven Means, and then maybe Jeremiah Moon, Chuck Wiley. So they definitely, I think, need somebody there. So I'd pick Justin Houston. And then the second question from Baltimore Wizard, how do you see the tight end usage during this season? There are 2 tight end sets in our scheme, but I think a variety of pairings would maximize production and health. Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely, Charlie Kolar, Nick Boyle, Charlie Kolar, and Mark Andrews. Yeah, I'm super excited for the tight end pairings, and if you want to go 3 tight end sets, we can talk about that as well. And you can line them up in a bunch of different ways, 1 on each side of the formation, 2 on one side if you want to have a heavy set to the right or to the left side. You can use Patrick Ricard in there too. But the key thing with a lot of these players is the versatility that they provide. And I mean, look, Isaiah Likely's versatility off the charts, right? You can put him on the outside, you can put him in the slot, you can put him in line, you can put him off the formation a little bit. There are so many options you can utilize him at. And if you're on third down and you need 12 yards, you need 14 yards, I'd be more than comfortable if you want your best receiving tight ends on the field. You can put Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely on the field. You can put, Andrew. You can put Andrews in the slot if you want. You can put Andrews in line if you want. You can do so much with him, but then Likely, if you want to put him on the outside, you can have Rashad Bateman play in the slot if you want. You can have Duvernay in there. I mean, there are so many options. Charlie Kolar is someone who I don't know the playing time aspect. If I had to predict, I think Likely gets a bit more playing time than Kolar. It does depend on the situation because Likely has shown flashes of blocker, so is Kolar, but I know they're going to trust Nick Boyle in those situations over those two. Mark Andrews also is a guy who has improved his blocking, so maybe they don't get as many opportunities in those run-heavy option plays and everything because they also put Ricard out there. So how heavy do they want to get if they also put a 6th offensive lineman on the field, which I think we'll see, right? I think McCary can be that 6th offensive lineman, assuming he doesn't have to start at any position. But I think if you want to put 3 tight end sets out there with Andrews, Boyle, and Kolar, or Andrews, Boyle, and Likely, or even if you want to put the Andrews with the 2 rookies out there, you have those options. So I think that you can maximize production by putting out different players in different circumstances and in different situations. And that's what makes their situation right now, the fact that they took 2 rookie tight ends instead of maybe 1 tight end and 1 wide receiver, a pretty big indication that they're going to want to move back over to the run heavy offense. Like, not saying it's going to be only runs. It's not going to be that way. You can't win running the ball 100 times and throwing the ball no times. I think it will be a bit more balanced of an offense than we saw in 2019. Maybe even 2022. I still continue to say the passing offense at the beginning of the year in 2021 did impress me a little bit. I think we saw some things that they can take over to 2022. So I'm excited to see those guys and what they can do, because it's not just the fact that, these are tight ends and they're only going to be on the field and run situations, because the position has evolved so much with the versatility. And what we saw in 2019 was the ability for them to go super heavy and just have so much success running the ball against opponents that opponents would have to start going heavy themselves and putting in defensive linemen over defensive backs. And then what that does is you run the ball. And then on one of those plays, you do a play action, and all of a sudden you have Mark Andrews running up the seam or Likely breaking free. But defenses still are heavy because they expect to run on a 3rd and short, let's say 2nd and short. And that gives you so many options on the field. So I'm excited to see the versatility that the Ravens can use these guys, and the versatility these guys can provide the Ravens in 2022. Finally, though, we do have a question from Ofi Defoyen. The question is, hi, Kevin. Some NFL teams have international market rights. Which country, in your opinion, should be a match for the Ravens? Thanks for the show. Congratulations for the 2,000 on YouTube, and have a nice day. Thank you for the kind words. I really appreciate those every week. So the international thing is actually interesting. The Ravens were one of, I have it here. I think it's one of 4 teams to not actually get a market, an international market. And the Rams, on the other hand, they have like 3 or 4 markets. So the markets that are available that were announced here were Canada, Mexico, Brazil, the United Kingdom, Spain, Australia, China, and Germany. I think that for the Ravens, I wouldn't mind in Australia. I personally, I like Australia. I think Australia would be really cool for the Ravens. The Rams are the only team there. I think if they wanted to do France, if they wanted to add France to that, that'd be cool. I could see Brazil maybe. There are only 2 teams in Canada. Maybe Canada would be a cool option. There are a couple other countries that could be it as well. I like the sound of Australia, though, with maybe France number 2, and then I don't know. Maybe Italy in there as well. Canada, I don't know. There are a couple, but obviously the whole point of the international markets is to expand the game to bigger audiences, international audiences. The NFL football, as we know it, is known as American football to a lot of the rest of the world. So to be able to earn this international audience that the NFL wants so much, they're doing what they can. All NFL teams are going to have to play at least 1 international game in the next 8 seasons. So the Ravens will be a part of that. They'll have to go travel somewhere. It's not going to be this year, but it's going to be in the next 8. So we'll see when that ends up happening. But they want to broaden their global reach. That's exactly what they want to do. I think that the Ravens are a team that are very marketable. They're a team that are exciting to watch. And, when you're trying to get a bigger fan base and kind of expand your reach, you want to have teams that are exciting in these markets. And I think for Baltimore, with Lamar Jackson, with the bounce back year that a lot of people expect them to have, I think giving them a market would be huge. So I like Australia a lot. I think France would be cool. Italy, maybe I'll throw Ireland too. I don't know, depending on where they want to reach, but maybe Canada as well. I think the Ravens will be good anywhere, but I'm going to say Australia is my pick for that. That's a fun question though. That's a good one because the NFL, we're going to I think see the continued efforts of this league to expand and expand and expand. I don't know if we're going to see a team, in a bunch of different countries, but maybe we will see a team in it, maybe like Mexico City or something. So we'll see what ends up happening with that. But that's all I have here today on Locked On Ravens. Thank you so much for tuning in. When we get back here tomorrow, I'll be diving into more Ravens content. So be sure to stay tuned for that, and I will see you right back here tomorrow.